Stay open. People will probably be able to hear that.
Oh, is it open? Okay.
We got
Oh, thanks,
people in
Joey.
the.
That part, yeah.
There are people in the next room working on acoustic treatments.
Got it. Oh, here I am. Okay.
So there will be some thumping. Yep, we're broadcasting.
Oh, sorry about that. Is there a reason why over here I just see this? Do I need to restart it?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're live. Now we got one
Got
viewer.
it.
There we go. Mhm.
Oh, there's a lag. All right, so I'm going to have you help me out here for a second because I'm watching something that's a lag, it looks like. I'm looking up, I'm looking down. Am I just...
I
Hi,
think
everybody.
I think that you're just experiencing a lag. Yes, see, you just call me over on there. All right. Yep. So I think it should be fine.
Okay.
You're just experiencing the lag. There's a delay signal from the hangout.
Got it. All right. Good morning. It looks like we have our first person to join us today for office hours. So, good morning. I'm going to have some trouble pronouncing your name. I believe it's Krasimir. But welcome to the class. And I'm hoping that some other people will be able to join us today. But if not, that's okay. I've been going through the discussion sections and the forums and trying to find those questions that people have right from the start of the class. So I'll jump in with those. But also, if you just want to say hi, pop in, pop out, that's great. If you have some questions to ask, now's a great time to do it as well. I know that the class just started, so it's hard to know what to ask or how things are going to work. But that's okay. I just wanted to take today as a chance to welcome everybody, get people started, calm some people down who are nervous, and calm some people down who are overexcited, and really get the idea of what this capstone is going to be about. So, as I usually do, I will pretty much talk and talk and talk. But I'm hoping people will pop up with some questions, as I said before. Uh, so, one of the things I wanted to talk about is this idea of a capstone. One of the reasons we waited to launch this capstone, and thank you for your patience, was that I really wanted to go out and look at what other people are doing with their capstone, what kind of response they were getting, what things students were looking for. And as an instructor, someone who went to school for a really long time, sometimes it's tempting for me to go, oh, I want to give them the opportunity to show me everything they've learned. But then I took a step back and I remembered, what we've called all these classes has been this idea of web design for everybody. And I really want to keep that theme here. This capstone is not for the top 2% of the students who have taken our other courses. This capstone really is for anyone who's been with us from the beginning, whether you thought it was incredibly easy or whether you struggled a little bit. And so one of the things that is being launched new with this course that they haven't had before is this idea of optional, not optional, but your choice of assignments. So everyone's going to be making a portfolio, but kind of the look and feel of the portfolios is going to vary by a lot. So some people might decide, they're still a little shaky, or they really want to focus on just what we've learned so far, and they are going to make some great but simple portfolios. Now, there are other people who feel they'd like to do something different, or they want to make something that is more professional looking. That's absolutely an option for this class as well. I'm encouraging students to go out and find pre-made templates and modify those templates for, their own portfolio. The reason, though, that I'm splitting them up into different assignments is that it's really hard to judge two portfolios, honestly, if one was made from scratch and one was made from a template. The one from scratch just isn't going to look as good. But that doesn't mean that the person who made it didn't put in just as much or more work, and that they didn't learn exactly what they were headed for. I do want to say hello to Enzo. I actually recognize your name quite a bit from some of the earlier discussion boards as well. So I think I'm going to jump into the forums and look at some of the questions that people have been asking me. We're in a different studio than I expected today. So I don't have the chance to kind of screenshot what I'm looking at for you to be able to see. But if at any point someone's kind of wondering, hey, where did this question come from? There is a chance that I'll be able to go back and kind of post some of those questions there. Okay, so I'm going to go look up a few questions.
Kresimir has a question.
All right, let me go back to the actual question while I'm looking at these. Okay. Oh, okay, this is great. The question is from week 2 assignment, where I want you to start putting down on paper what your site is going to look like. And so I'm looking at this. He says, for now, I have an idea about my website in my head, but I don't have any experience on using wireframes, but I'm willing to learn. This is a really great question. The funny part is it's from week 2, but I'm wondering if I should move this discussion into week 1 anyway. The wireframes are something that I'm really hoping people will take pen and paper, crayon and paper, actually really pencil and paper, and just start sketching out those ideas that are in your head. It takes a kind of big jump from in your head to on paper. And then actually the jump from paper to coding is smaller and a little bit easier than you think. So I want people to start sketching out what the layout of their page will be. Will you have a header, footer? How many different sections do you plan on having? Really start thinking about all the content that you want to have and how will it look best on your mobile phone versus a laptop. So the good news is you don't need to use any tools for your wireframes. I know they're out there. I actually suggest that you don't use them, because there is I'm going to go out and say 92% chance that what you think you're going to make is going to change throughout these next 6 weeks. You've got some ideas, you've got some things you want to do. I want you to put those on paper, because it's easier to code when you look at your piece of paper than it is to code when you have to think in your head how you want it to look. So start putting on paper with every expectation that it's going to change. Your final portfolio does not need to match these sketches. And I use the term sketch and wireframe kind of interchangeably, because I know that there are some people who are going to want to be specific about sizes, dimensions, but I'm not requiring that at all. So I'm glad that you already have an idea in your head. That's a huge part of the battle. But this will give you a chance to kind of draw it out. Now, the kind of sneaky thing is that you're going to definitely learn something as you make your sketches and your wireframes, but it's not going to compare at all to how much you're going to learn when you actually do your peer reviews of other people's wireframes, because you'll suddenly get all these new great ideas, which, you know, everyone should realize when you submit your wireframe, you're kind of putting it out there in public. That's how the web works. People are probably going to borrow from your ideas because there's no really copyright on where you place your footer and where you place your header. Okay. The next question is by portfolio. What do I mean by it? It is a term that I am using for your website. Your portfolio can be anything you want. It can be about you. It can be you know, something personal about you, your family, your hobbies. It can be something that's, you know, very much a reflection of your day-to-day life. It can also be something that you've done, you're working on for school or for work, or some sort of, you know, passion or interest that you have, but it's not specifically about you. So there are no guidelines on what you make this about. I tried to keep things very kind of free form. There's a few requirements if you check out, they're listed in the site where, you know, things need to validate. You do need to use pictures. I do want it to be 4 pages. And when I say 4 pages, they can even be a single screen view, but I want you to be able to demonstrate that you know how to link 4 different areas of content together. So by portfolio, some people are going to hate this, but I do not have a strict definition. It is whatever you want it to be. Again, I'm really hoping that students will get inspiration from each other. I'm going to go check out right here. I do have one discussion section where I ask people in week 1, framework options. I think it's actually in the greet, meet and greet. I will find it, but there's a section where people are just putting in what they think they're going to make their portfolio about. I know that we've had cooking, photography. Someone else is doing his landscaping business. I believe there's another student who I've been hearing from way in the past who's making a site for his daughter. So it can really be anything you'd like it to be. Go down here. All right, I'm going to keep looking. Okay. Oh, okay. Quick note. That's a great idea. Someone mentioned that they're going to sketch it out and change it as they go along. As far as what the grading rubrics are, you can go right in week 1. I know people are very, you know, rightly so concerned about how will this be graded. They want to make sure they get credit for everything they have. Inside the course content in week 1, at the very, I have a whole section called course objectives and assignment options. There's something called portfolio grading rubric. And if you look along there, you'll see that your site, you'll get points for things like 10 points for does it validate, 20 points for is the site responsive. And what I mean by responsive is do you have a clear layout change between the mobile view and a larger view? I'm only requiring 2 different views. I'm going to check, you know, is the site well styled? And that, of course, is very hard to grade, very hard to pick out. I've made the rubric such that if this is just an amazing piece of work, absolutely give them 10 points. If it's, you know, well styled and they used a variety of colors, fonts, you know, definitely a good amount of rules, they can expect an 8 out of 10. This is the most subjective of all the options. And then you need to come up with 4 different enhancements for your site. Each one of these will be 10 points. Again, I'm leaving this open-ended for you. You may want to add JavaScript. That's a great option. Someone else might say, you know what? I'm using Bootstrap, and some of my enhancements are going to be that I'm going to make this much more accessible than the default versions. Someone else may want to do something where they put in a Google Calendar or a Lightbox. In week 4 of the course, I have lectures up there where I've tried to go through and give you code snippets for different ideas of things you might want to add. Okay. I have a question about deployment and hosting. So if you go into week 5, we talk about deployment and hosting. There is no requirement that you need to deploy and host this site. Students are taking this course from all over the world, and not everyone has the same access and options to the software that we might have here in Michigan. So if you want to deploy your site, this is great. I'm encouraging, I hope people do it. I even have a discussion forum where I'm hoping students will talk about their different, who's using what to deploy. What hosting site are you using? Quick thing, just to remind you, I might even put a link back to our first HTML course, is that having a domain name is separate from hosting. A lot of times you'll see advertisements for get your domain name for only, $9.99. What you don't want to forget is having that domain name doesn't do you any good unless you're paying a monthly fee to somebody to actually host that site where you're going to put your files up there. So if you decide to host it, that's great. You'll be able to include your URL in your submission. If you decide not to host it and you're just going to keep it what we call locally, on your laptop, you can still do that. I'm hoping to do a video on something called, screen capture. So you can still walk people through the site. It won't really be possible for you to upload all of your code for your website because the size is just going to be too big. If you have images, they take up a lot of space, and so we're not going to do that. The other thing I do hesitate to have students do is require them to visit other people's sites. I know we're all great people. We're all here in the capstone. That's the only reason I'm even letting URLs be an option. But I'm uncomfortable with the idea of sending students to sites that I myself have not been to before. Hopefully that helps. And that is up in week 5, but in the forum, some other people have already been asking about hosting. So I have linked that. So if you take a look in the week 1 discussion, you'll find some kind of forward-looking links. Okay. All right.
There's some ones that were earlier too.
Down near the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one do you want to answer?
I'm gonna go to how will graders test it with the different browsers available. So students, it's actually up to you. The graders are going to have, to be honest, a pretty easy task. I am hoping the graders can sit back, look at your written description or look at your video submission and say, boom, 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 this looks great. Now, if a student only demos their site on, say, Firefox and none of the other browsers, that is absolutely fine. But maybe one of the extras or enhancements for their site is going to be that they're going to demo it on 3 or maybe 4 different browsers and say, hey, look, I took that extra time to make sure that I'm compliant on all these different browsers. That's an excellent thing to do. In web design for everybody, the goal is for you all to have a chance to basically show off what you have learned. I'm not requiring that you go off too far and do too many new things. I think this should be a celebration of your work, not something that you suffer through. So for the grading rubrics, they'll be right there from day 1. They're up there. So when you submit your portfolio, you'll be able to kind of guide your grader along and point out to them all the points you made, which, by the way, this course is 6 weeks long, but I do have an option that in week 5, you can submit your assignment as an optional assignment. My hope is that this will eliminate any surprises. You can hand it in a week early, get some feedback. If people find any issues with it, you'll be able to fix them and then upload during the final week. All right.
The Joomla question.
Joomla. So there's a question about using Joomla, which my guess is there's a huge number of people who have no idea in this class, who have no idea what that is, and that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to. I think it's fine for an advanced course, to be perfectly honest. It's overkill for what you need to do in this class. But if that's something that you're excited about, I think it's a fine option. I've had students on my residential course use it as well. All right, I'm going to go down to, it's been a long time. Oops. I'll go back. I saw one. It's been a long time since you've done things. Absolutely. We can link back. You can go back to other topics. You should be able to access anything from the 4 earlier courses that we've been doing, and kind of reference any of the videos there. In some of the weeks, I actually do link back to videos from the other courses. So in week 2, when you're doing your design sketches, I tried to link back to 2 of the videos I had from the from the responsive course. When I talk about media queries, I link back to some of those videos. But that's fine. If you feel like there's a topic where you're like, oh, I don't remember how to do that, I'm hoping that's exactly what these online office hours will be for, as well as the discussion sections. This is the whole point of this capstone, is to review. So feel free to spend as much time going back as opposed to trying to go forward. For those of you who feel confident and remember everything, you can instead stretch yourself a little bit further if you want to. All right, so I'm going to go to, I'll just keep going. Hi, Professor, I'm taking another course. And I already have purchased a domain from Squarespace, which means I'm not writing the code from scratch at all. Is it okay? So this is a really good question, because you have this option of, hey, do I use something from WordPress or some other templates or even Bootstrap? The requirement for this class is that your code needs to validate. That's a really big chunk of points. And it also needs to be responsive. If you don't understand the code that you're using, if you're using somebody else's code and you can go through that code and say, oh, great, look, right here, they wrote div ID equals footer. That should really be a footer tag, not an ID. Oh, and now that I've changed it from ID equals footer, I need to go back into my style sheet and change it from, pound footer to the word footer. If you can make those steps and take something that already exists and apply the good practices and principles we've been learning in this course, that's absolutely fine. If you have a site and you really don't understand anything that's going on there, I would recommend instead that you have a sub-site, something just for this class where you do understand it. It may not be as cool looking as the one that you found online, but it'll be much easier for you to demonstrate to your fellow students that whatever you're handing in is something that you understand. You don't need to understand every line of code in your website. I have some Google Analytics in my site, which I don't know, I copied and pasted because that's what they told me to do. But you do need to understand the majority of the material on your site. And that's why we put in these requirements of validation, accessibility, and responsiveness.
Enzo's was a lot.
Enzo's. Oh, okay. Oh, Enzo, the Bootstrap question. This is a great question. So some people may decide to use Bootstrap or other frameworks. And Bootstrap, I find interesting because it's transitioning from Bootstrap 3, which we learned about, to Bootstrap 4. And I actually have that as a potential extra for your portfolio, is this idea of, hey, Bootstrap 4 is a little bit of a new frontier. Why don't you go out there and play with it a little bit? I do think it's stable enough. I wouldn't suggest it otherwise, for you to go and kind of look at how they do things. One of the examples I give in week 4, I believe, is how to do a Bootstrap carousel. It, to me, would be very interesting to see how they do the carousel in Bootstrap 4, because it definitely looks different. Okay, so actually, let me get a drink of water. So the question is, what else is out there? I wish I knew. I really had my head down while making all these courses and, teaching at U of M and trying to create all this stuff as to what is out there right now. Because it's not just, these courses in front end and back end development aren't just here. Mine certainly isn't the only course. Coursera certainly isn't the only place where you can look as well. I mean, there's a lot of different places we can look. For first part is what the difference is between front end development and back end development. And in this class, we focused on that front end. That's the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript. And so hopefully you're starting, particularly with the HTML and CSS, having some solid feelings on that one. If you were looking to do more front end programming, I would actually recommend that you look around for more on JavaScript, or really, to be honest, jQuery. jQuery is the library that most people use. The reason we did JavaScript first is because it's good to have a little bit of knowledge about JavaScript before you jump into jQuery. But I don't know anybody else's teaching styles at the moment. I do know that Chuck Severance, Dr. Chuck, is working on a course for back-end development. So he'll take those things pretty much with the understanding that you've finished my specialization, and maybe you've done a little bit with him with the database, and you learn how to, hey, I have this site and I have a cool form. How do I actually save the data? What do I do to make this complete? So front-end development, I would kind of focus on the jQuery, JavaScript. You might want to consider Node.js, which is front-end and back-end. And then if you're interested in doing more of the other part of web design, kind of that database back-end stuff, you should probably look into something called full stack development. It really puts all the things together. I'm going to check out over here for a second. Discussions. All right. Oh, great. And actually, I just wanted to point out that to that last question about what courses you can take, I did notice that in the week 1 discussion, some people have recommended the responsive website development and design specialization by the University of London. I've heard really good things about that one. And the full stack web development from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. What's the difference between my specialization on web development and maybe the one from the University of London is when I created this course, when I first started creating these courses, I really have tried to teach with that idea of web development for everybody. So you may not even remember, but I had videos on, how do you open a file? How do you save a file? Because these are the kind of stumbling blocks that can trip people up really early in a class and make you want to quit, because you feel stupid sometimes when you can't get something to work and you feel like you're the only one. So my specializations were to make people realize, oh, I'm not the only one that's happened to. And look at me, I get to help somebody else because I've messed up a few times and they're just getting started. These other specializations will definitely take you further because they're going to pick up at a little bit more of a rapid pace and an expectation that some of these terms we've been throwing around. So again, great way to learn more about it, but the pace will probably be a little bit quicker. All right, just a few of the other questions I've had that I started answering yesterday on the discussion boards. Somebody asked if your site needs to be in English. They are developing their website in Italian. that's absolutely fine by me. I actually think it's going to be really cool. I'm excited to see some of the things people have going on. When you're submitting your assignments, I've started using some of Chuck Severance's tool. So can we have more of like a gallery and people can see what other people are doing. I'm hoping this will be inspirational to people and be like, hey, you know what? Programming really is, language free. It's very non-specific. So you do need to provide any write-ups and any demonstrations. You'll need to use English just to make sure we kind of have a common language for grading. But as far as developing goes, I'm absolutely fine if you use, your native language or something you're studying. Now, I'll be suspicious if it's full of Latin, because I know that there are shortcuts to fill pages and pages with Latin. But otherwise, really, you guys should knock yourselves out, find something you're interested in. Feel free to try something that you think is going to be too difficult and you might fail at it, because in your write-up, you're going to say, I tried to do this cool thing and I failed spectacularly. That's my extra. I'm okay with that. Just kind of going back to one of the comments we had, someone asked about, using a template. This is another reason why your first assignment is to make this sketch. Because if you're going to use a template online, there's a really good chance that the way they have it set up is not exactly the way that you want it to be set up. So if you can draw out the little differences, it's going to help you go in and be like, oh, you know what? I can cut out this entire section. Personally, I'd be thrilled. I'm going to imagine in my teacher world that you're going through the code, you're using inspect element, you're clicking on a section and figuring out, oh, using inspect element, I now see I don't need this huge chunk of code, or I don't need these links over here. So take it all as a learning process. I'm going to go and bring up another question I found online, because it's kind of close to my heart, because, as I've mentioned numerous times, I am not at all artsy or crafty or color conscious. I've worn the same 3 shirts for the entire specialization for a reason, because I cannot match colors. And other people are like, how do I get started? So I did find a site, and Sai, can you bring that site up for me?
Yep.
And it's linked again. It's in the discussion section if you want to take a look at it.
I gotta open it.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
You
got it? They can see it? Okay. So the website it's Coolors, maybe, or COOLORS.co. And it's kind of a cool website I just found the other day that can help you pick out cool color schemes. Because again, I don't really have a great idea of it. So what I did is I just went into my search engine and let me double check what I Googled. I Googled web color schemes, and a few things popped up, and this was one of them. And how it works is if you go into this site and you click on the Start the Generator button, of course, it'll give you different color schemes that go well together. And as you hit the space bar, you can just keep clicking a few times. You can see that it just gives you different color schemes that are known to look well on a web layout. You cannot see it from our kind of demonstration right here, but each one of these colors, if you highlight one section up near the top, it shows the different hex RGB values. You can change those. Can you go up to the slider up there near the top?
You want me to change
yeah.
RGB?
Yeah, either one. I think you can just kind of slide things around. But if you don't quite like the color they have, you can change that there. So, how you get your color scheme to work, let's avoid white on black, especially because we want to do things with the contrast. But feel free to go out there and utilize these different tools. So, fake it till you make it is what they say. And that's what I tend to do is I have someone else tell me what colors go well together, and then I really stick to those. All right, so there's a question about doing a 2-language website. Any tips on doing that? Well, first of all, just so you know, quick reminder, way back, HTML in the head section, we have all that different metadata. So you're going to want to make sure that you utilize the language. So you can have language equals English, interior language equals Portuguese, right? I believe that's correct. What some of my students have done in the past, I've had students who are German majors, is they make every page, they make a duplicate page. And so they have 2 copies of their home page, 2 copies of their photography page, and they put one in English and one in, German was what I had before. And the English versions all link to each other. The German versions all link to each other. And both page has a link back to the other site. So if you're on the German version and you click on English version, it takes you back to the home page of the English version. So to be honest, it's not a lot more work because you can simply make one version, copy and paste those files so you have a duplicate, and then you go in and you translate. But you do want to make sure you have the correct meta tag so that on your second version, you're not claiming it's in English when it isn't really in English. Chuck. Yeah, Dr. Chuck is awesome. If anyone hasn't taken one of his courses before, although I think most of you have kind of, come in from his courses, he's really a pioneer in all of this online learning. One of the problems with following Chuck when you teach is that people don't realize how many tools he's created from scratch. So as I've been learning to teach online and use these different tools, it's really been interesting to find out, well, how does Chuck do this and how does Chuck do that? Like, well, Chuck stays up for 47 hours and writes a bunch of code to create his own auto grader or his own peer grader. And so kind of figuring out the balance of what to use has been really interesting. And we are borrowing from his capstone in that we're using something new called WarpWire. Also for the peer grader, I'm going to be using his peer grader because I like the idea that with his grader, only the top score is kept. So if you have 3 students who grade you and one's bad and the other 2 are great, that's okay. A rogue grader isn't going to mess anything up. But you also get credit for grading others because that's a lot of work. And I think it helps when people know they're getting, points for it to really put a lot of effort into it. So, yep, Chuck's great. Everything I've taught almost has been him teaching it and then me following along later and going, hey, I'm going to teach that class now and I'm going to kind of follow along. But anything we can do to get more people, if not interested in coding, because not everybody has to be interested in coding, but at least comfortable with it, I think is great. The JavaScript, I'll talk to him about that one. I'm not sure how much will go into his, full stack development. But it's true. I mean, we just touched on JavaScript. We only did, that little bit of interactivity. And there is a lot more we could go on with that one. All right. There is a question on materials, how, non-free material like photos and fonts, and can people use them? If you pay for them, you can absolutely use them. Some people might not even know that there are fonts out there that you pay for. So, we have all these graphic designers and artists who put a lot of time and effort into creating something, unique that they've made that no one else has thought about. And so what they can do is they can put their fonts up there, and for a small fee, people can pay to download and use them on their website. Just if you're looking for something a little bit different. Not required in this course at all, but of course, but you are allowed to use things like this. I know that I personally struggle with this whole idea of, what am I allowed to use? What am I not allowed to use? clearly I can't use anything that's been copyrighted without permission. But even just pictures you find on the internet, like, is it okay for me to use that? You don't necessarily want to link to somebody else's copy of an image because they might change it, and you have no idea what they're going to change it to. And that's actually caused some issues for one of my students when they were linking to a picture and someone wasn't happy with that and they changed the picture. You don't want to download it and act as if it's yours from the beginning. So what I tend to do is there's something called Creative Commons. So you can go out and you can search Creative Commons for your images, things like that, and give credit where credit is due. I also, again, in week 4, I believe, I talk about something called Font Awesome, which I loved this year. I can't draw at all. And I was like, oh, all I want is a little picture of this or a little picture of that. Font Awesome is this really cool package where you can use all these fonts you see on all the other pages. The bullseye, the bus, the calendar. There's no point in you recreating things from scratch that already exist as long as they're out there readily available for you and it's understood that it's being shared. So if you're not sure about your content, avoid anything that says copyright. You should not use that unless you've gotten permission. Avoid just taking random things from the internet and really kind of focus on that, Creative Commons. But now there's a reason why there were like 27 pictures of my dog Bacon, because I own those pictures and I didn't have to worry about whether or not I could use them.
Do you want to show some sites for fonts or something?
Well, do you want to go to, do you know of some?
Actually, well, yeah. I mean, I was a graphic designer, right. So
I think that would be great if you want to show, if you could bring up a couple.
Yeah.
There's a slight lag here, so I need to wait while Sai brings that up.
Defont.com is one of those sites. But you got to be careful because you'll see it says free for personal use only. Hit question. You can go to download, and it will download it into a zip file for you. You can open as a TTF for Mac users or a RAR for PC users. But you just got to be careful because some of these, see a font for personal use only. And then if you want it for commercial, then you contact whoever emails on there. A lot of people just privately develop these. And then if you want to see how, like, my site will be called Balloons. And you can see what it looks like before you download it or buy it, whatever you want to do. I mean, that's one site to use. Another good one is 1001. Is pretty good. Font Squirrel has a little bit more of like modern stuff that people use. And there's a lot of forums on the website that do it too. And then Colleen was talking about Creative Commons. And if you just go to search creativecommons.org, it will automatically find any Creative Commons images for you. And we actually do this at the U of M a lot. So you can look up on Flickr images for that. Say I'm looking for a boat. And I want to use it for commercial purposes and modify and adapt it, like maybe edit the image whatever way I want to. Hit search. And these are all images I can use with Creative Commons for free. As long as I go in here, it says some rights reserved. And then this one says share alike. And it's a slightly different Creative Commons license. But if you really want to be free of any stickiness, just go with one that says attribution. Share alike is if you remix, transform, you have to redistribute your image as a Creative Commons attribution. You can't just say I own this image now because I remixed it. So now if I go back here, again, that one's share alike. Trying to find. And this one is just purely attribution, where you just have to attribute the person who took the picture. Who's Christine, who didn't really fully name herself. So you can message those people and then get their full name and credit them correctly.
Right. And so when you click, when we talk about crediting it and attributing it, I found that usually when you click on that picture, it'll actually, including the image, it'll have the image tag, the source, but it'll also often include the title, some sort of text that automatically makes the attribute to them. So you don't even have to worry about, did you spell it right? Things like that. So no, it's, I also think this is interesting. Sai jumped in and he talks about how he uses, all these different things. That's what my aim was for. Sai already knew about these types of things out there. But for those of you who aren't programmers, who wanted to learn a little bit about web design, maybe you're more on the creative side, maybe you're actually administrative, understanding these different things and saying, all right, I want to use something. One, what are the legal ramifications, and two, what's that little bit of code that I do need to change to make it work for me? So can you head over to Font Awesome as well, just so I can do a quick show of that. It's fontawesome.io.
Got it.
Okay. Okay. So you don't need to stare at the little tiny thing right here on the screen. But again, this is something I cover in the extras, I call it, for your portfolio, your enhancements. Super easy to use. You can add loading, GIFs, lots of different icons. Really just a fun way to make your page, look a little bit more professional, with almost no work on your part. That's the beauty of learning things. You feel like you've really learned something when you're like, oh, this is easy, completely forgetting that, back in October, this was really difficult for some people. Now it's easy. Okay. Let me go back to the questions. Yes.
Are you funny? Can you watch my
channel? So one of the things I am hoping to do that is new for this course, if you go in and you kind of look in the course content, there are these little things called discussion prompts. So it's really easy for us to lose track of what's going on in the forums, because they get so big and nobody wants to read everything. It's really hard to follow. So for a few very specific topics, such as what is your topic of your portfolio going to be? Are you going to use a template? And if so, what is it? Are you hosting your site? What company are you going to use? Is it free? Is it paid? I've tried to make very specific places in the course where we can find that information, because I think it's going to be really great to reference back to. I also have discussion prompts for each one of these office hours. So rather than posting your questions in the regular discussion section, any place you see, hey, office hours, you can click in there, put your questions in there. So if you can't make it to office hours, at the moment, we're not exactly, inundated with questions, so I can hit every single one. But if at some point we get a lot of questions beforehand, if you upvote a question, I'll know, oh, there's at least a few students who would like me to talk about this in office hours tomorrow. And I can kind of prepare something for you for the next, for the next day, the next office hours. Because I know a lot of you can't make it. I appreciate that you're all around the world. I'm kind of constrained by, when my children have babysitters and I can come in here. So I did try to space them out a little bit throughout the semester. There's one this week. There's one next week. There'll be no office hours, just so you know, during week 3. I'll be completely off the grid during week 3, doing camping and family stuff. But then 4, 5, and 6, again, we'll have these office hours to try to touch base. I'm really hoping with this kind of, smaller class, we'll be able to really get to people's issues as quickly as we can. Here. Yes. Absolutely. So it was, could you post all the links that you've mentioned? Yes, I was ripping them off and I was writing them down. I'm going to make sure I include all those links right there. Also, maybe a few others that I've seen people mention in the discussions board.
The Google Plus comment line.
Okay, so
you can see them there, but you'll post them somewhere else.
I'll post them in the course as well. So we'll put them in a few different places so people can stumble across them and say, oh, wow, this is cool. Again, so this course is 6 weeks long, which seems like a really long time and you could build something really great. I just want to remind people, these small things take a little bit of time. If you've never used someone else's font before, you're going to be spending time looking for them. You're going to be spending time downloading it, trying to get it to link up. Take these things into mind when you kind of figure out what you want to build. This class is not meant to kill you. Remember, if you're spending 6 hours a week on this, that's a lot of time. And so 1, make sure you're working smart. Don't spend 5 hours looking for that perfect font. It's not going to help. But factor in that you're going to spend 30 minutes looking for a cool font, and then you're going to spend 15, 20 minutes because, oops, you downloaded it and put it in one folder when you really meant to put it in a different folder. These are the kind of things that are going to take up your time. So start small. Pick, one small thing you want to add at a time and add it in incrementally. I want everyone to have something they're proud of at the end, and that's going to mean something really different to different people. Okay. And I also have just people kind of mentioning other icons and images, places to find images. This is something I didn't think about in my discussion forum, so I think I will add a kind of repository, if you will, where people can put down, things they've used. I do know we have a few photographers in this course, so, you can feel free to, don't spam people, but include your own link. So you can kind of show off some of the things that you've made or some of the sites that you think are cool. Let me add that. Yep. Got it. All right. Let me go back here. So have you checked and made sure no one's hanging out and not come into the question and answer? We had that last time.
Down here? On the comment section?
Yeah. I closed that part.
There's a few people that haven't really commented that are just watching.
Oh, that's fine. No, okay. I just want to make sure no one had posted questions. I'm kind of rotating, circling around, looking at discussion boards and things like that.
Yeah, just suggest. There are some people that haven't asked.
Oh, here we go. Got it. All right, so we're good. So we've got about 5 more minutes left to go. We can, I can't sing or dance or anything like that. I've gone through most of the things in the discussion board. I'm really hoping people enjoy the capstone. I know that sounds weird. People, there's some people who enjoy everything. Again, I'm going to bring up Dr. Chuck because he's kind of my partner in crime on this, and we have an interesting debate going because Chuck feels like everyone should be passionate about computer science and everyone should be passionate about the portfolios they're going to do. The reason I left it open-ended is not everyone is passionate about things. Some people are just, they kind of go along and they took this course because they wanted to, learn something. Not because they're passionate about programming or web design. but because it feels good to understand what's going on. Everyone uses the web now. Understanding a little bit of how it works is nice. You can go on to a lot of these places. You can go to a lot of places and say, hey, I want to make a website. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, great. I have a really cool looking website. And my hope is that now, if you look at those sites, you'll go, oh, that is good. But, I'm going to see what happens when I resize the screen or look at it on a phone. Is it responsive? Maybe you'll notice things that you never noticed before about accessibility. Hey, there's really no way for someone to hit this button if they're using their keyboard and, instead of a mouse. You can also, just look at their source code and go, that's a lot of code for something that, probably didn't need to be that much code. Whenever you're going to auto-generate a website, whenever you're making a tool where people can drag and drop, you're going to have so much more code than you need, which kind of brings us back to this one final thing I'll mention. Again, your 3 options for this course are, and they overlap, is write everything by hand. You're basically coding from scratch. You go in, you go, oh, I do like these few lines of code here. You drop them in. But for the most part, you're coding from scratch. The second option is to use a template. So you go out there, you're like, this site looks awesome. I'm going to use, this site. And then the third option, which kind of gives you the creativeness of from scratch, but the structure of a template, is to use a framework. Some people think using the templates is cheating. They're like, oh, I can't do that. It already existed. Somebody already did all the work. You will find that using somebody else's code takes almost as much time as writing your own for simple sites. So if you're going for a simple site, it makes more sense to write it by yourself. If you're going for a more complex site, absolutely use the template. But again, factor in the time it's going to take you to be like, now why did they do this? And why didn't they close this tag? Start off by running their code through a validator, finding those places where they broke the rules. You'll go in and fix it. And as soon as you fix it, you'll probably find it broke something else. So some people enjoy that. It's like a game to them. Oh, I broke it. Can I fix it? Yay. So again, not everyone enjoys programming. You've got to enjoy that idea of small problem, hooray, small problem, hooray. And if you do, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. And if you're not going to have a lot of fun, at least you'll have, something to show at the end of this capstone. We're going to go ahead and finish up online office hours for today. Thanks to you who came in and joined us. Also, I've already noticed a lot of activity on the forum, so thanks to all of you who've been answering each other's questions, posting questions. It can be intimidating to be those first few people alive and talking, so thanks.